and thank everybody for joining us today. I'm going to do a very, very quick introduction of our wonderful brain trust here, and I will leave it to a little bit later for our three lawyers who are joining us to talk a little bit about their backgrounds and how they entered the field. And that is Fred De Leon, Tim Murray, and Randi Stoner, who's here with us. But first of all, I'm really excited to share two guests who are generously joining us from their respective admissions office. Jennifer Beckett, who is joining us from University of Southern California, USC Law Admissions Office, and Karman Hsu, who is joining us from University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA Law Admissions Office. So I want to thank all five of you for joining us today. And I'll turn the floor over to Jennifer and then to Karman. Does that sound okay?
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Professor Murray, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak today. As you noted before, I'm an admissions counselor. I've been at Gould for about 5 years, and before that, I did go to law school. So I have kind of both perspectives on both the applying side and the admissions side. I'm happy to speak to both. But about Gould, we're a small law school. We have a collegial and diverse environment and interdisciplinary curriculum. We have about 200 incoming JD students per year, so leading to a very tight-knit community. We're located near downtown LA, close to the law firms and courthouses, and we boast small class sizes and a supportive and collegial environment. We have 4 areas of concentration: business law, media, entertainment, and technology law, and public interest law, and lastly, alternative dispute resolution. Within those 4 areas of concentration, we also offer certificates that fall within those: business law certificate, transnational law and business certificate, the media entertainment law, and technology and entrepreneurship law certificates, public interest law, and alternative dispute resolution. And you can pursue these certificates with your JD. They're concurrent with your education. They're kind of like majors. And so if you are thinking about specializing in a certain area, then I definitely recommend that you look at those, because it's just nice to see what is offered. You'll see the mandatory requirements as well as elective courses that are offered. Within those 4 areas of concentration as well, we have clinics, and clinics are great because you can get the hands-on experience working with real-life clients. And I can talk a little bit more about that later if anybody has questions, but they roughly fall within those 4 areas I mentioned before. We also have practicums, and those are like clinics, but more about they're less about direct client services and more about impact litigation. And they have a seminar component. And just as broadly, as history majors, it's a great way for you to use those research and writing skills to make tangible differences in real people's lives. You likely have come across laws and regulations in your studies, and knowing how those laws came into being, their historical context, the reasoning behind the way laws have been crafted a certain way, and how laws have been implemented to achieve certain the drafter's intent, for example, or not, is really important. So again, thank you. That was kind of a very brief overview of our program, and I can talk about admissions processes if you have questions about that later. But again, thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. That's excellent to start things off. And Karman, I'll go right over to you, please.
Great, thank you. And yeah, thank you also from UCLA Law School for inviting us to speak about our program. So thank you, Professor Murray. Thanks for having us. UCLA Law School, a little bit about myself. As Professor Murray mentioned, my name is Karman Hsu. I'm the Director of Admissions here at UCLA Law School. I am a local of Southern California, went to Irvine Valley College, then went to UC Irvine, graduated from Syracuse Law School. And I've actually been at UCLA Law School for 17 years, believe it or not. I can't even believe it. And so, like my counterpart at USC, Jennifer, if you have any questions about law school, the law school admissions process, the legal profession, this panel definitely is well equipped to hopefully answer most, or if not all, of your questions. So a little bit about UCLA. I will start just geographically, just because having grown up in Southern California, I myself actually wasn't sure where UCLA Law was located. We are located on the main campus. Many people actually think that we are located in downtown LA. We're actually located about 35 minutes west of downtown LA, closer to Santa Monica. We're about 10 to 15 minutes away from the Pacific Ocean, nestled in a residential neighborhood. A lot of times people will ask me what makes UCLA Law different. I always make sure I start off with I am no expert at any other law school other than the one I graduated from and the one that I work for. But if I were to say what I think makes UCLA Law special, I would certainly say the wide variety and depth of the programs that we have here. We have 9 specializations that range from Native Nations law to business law, public interest law, environmental law, our media, entertainment, technology, and sports law program. Very traditional areas of law that have been around for a while, but we also have programs, centers, and institutes, probably about 30 to 40 of them that range from also the very traditional areas of law to the more cutting edge programs, such as our critical race studies program, our Williams Institute that focuses on sexual identity and sexual orientation and gender identity law, in addition to food law, technology law program as well, and everything in between. So I like to say, because we have such a diverse and array group of offerings in our curriculum, it also is a great reflection of the diversity in our faculty, our student body, and the community that we are here at UCLA Law School. Because in order for those programs to exist in such an array of options and variety, we need the faculty that study and focus in those areas, and the student body, of course, that are interested in that area, hence the diversity in faculty and student body and community as well. The diversity doesn't just begin and end with our programs, centers, and institutes and specializations. It also ranges through our experiential learning courses, our clinics, and our study abroad program as well. We have a foreign legal exchange program with 16 law schools around the world that you can study at. Our clinics range from simulated clinics to live client-based clinics and policy and research-based clinics as well. We also have about 40 plus student organizations, very similar to student organizations in undergrad. Some are student identity based, others are specialization and interest area based, and others are just pure fun to kind of get your mind off of law school. We also have a mental wellness program, academic support program. Because we are located on the main campus, we have the benefit of tapping into the resources that main campus has as it relates to mental wellness, disability, the gym, physical fitness, those kinds of things as well. So again, as I talk about the diversity in our programs, I'd like to springboard into the diversity in what we're looking for in admissions as well, which, as Jennifer mentioned, we can certainly talk about later if there are questions. But we are looking for, certainly smart students, right? But that it certainly doesn't start and end there either. We are looking for people who will be a great fit in the community, that show academic promise that may not be evident in sheer numbers, right? That's why the personal statement, resume, your addenda are so important in the application process. So I will leave it at that and hand it back over to Professor Murray.
That's great. And Karman and Jennifer, thank you for kicking things off. That last thing I sometimes ask, this is the 11th event in this series that we've done. And we've had people from national parks and archives and professors and all other, a lot of different backgrounds. For the sake of this series, I often ask what you started to answer there toward the end, Karman. So if you and Jennifer are able to stick around for a little bit after our lawyers introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their work, I'd be interested in spinning that out just a little bit. And that is sort of reverse engineering the perfect law school applicant. sort of like a Frankenstein a project, but sort of how do you reverse it? What are you really looking like? So looking for, and you started that a little bit in your closing thoughts there, and I'd love to circle back to that for both you and Jennifer if we have time a little bit later. Because I think that's gonna be a nice thing for our students to hear. I'm gonna throw into the chat for everybody simply the link to both USC School of Law and the UCLA School of Law for any who are interested in clicking through that. And then also to all of our guests, to Karman, Jennifer, and anybody else, if there are some useful links that you'd like to share, please go ahead and throw them into the chat or let me call it out loud and I'll find it and throw it into the chat as well. Okay. Well, Randi is here, so I'm going to turn things over to Randi. Randi is a student in our MA program who also has experience in the law as a lawyer. So Randi, do you want to give some opening remarks, and then I'll pass things off to Fred and to Tim online.
Okay. Yeah, hi. My name's Randi Stoner. I'm now a retired attorney. I went to what is now UC Law SF. Formerly named after the first Chief Justice of the state of California. They had to take his name off the building because he was such a horrible person. Some of my classmates were not happy about it. I was quite pleased. I went to school. It was a lot of fun. I got in, got out, I went into civil litigation, which has a lot of work sometimes, and it's a lot of stuff I didn't like. I really did not like doing civil discovery, and I really hated taking depositions because I don't like really interacting with people that I don't know and don't like and really want to kill. But I really did love parts of it. Really love Law in Motion, where I get involved in fighting with the other side on paper over issues of law, fact, especially issues of law, and appellate work, which is the same thing writ large. And I had a little bit of a talent for that. And eventually, after several years of working in the private field and going crazy from doing discovery and the like, I was able to get a job with the San Bernardino County Superior Court, which is our local trial court, and I became a judicial staff counsel, which is a research attorney for the trial court judges who do civil litigation. Civil litigation is so paper intensive that a judge would have a hard time handling more than 2 or 3 cases at a time if they had to do all their own legal research. So they have staffs of lawyers that help them out on it. And I got to be one of those. And it was a great job. The court staff and the court administration, the people there are really nice. The judges are wonderful. We have a really good court in San Bernardino County. Something that surprised me. I had been up in San Francisco and I grew up in Los Angeles. And everybody always kind of looked down on San Bernardino County. But San Bernardino County, as far as the court, has a really good court and it has a really good reputation. Attorneys like to come to San Bernardino County because the judges are well supported and think about the cases and make good decisions. You know, being an attorney is a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. Yeah, the court was sort of nice. They used to throw me out after 8 hours or so. They didn't like it when I'd work more at the time. If you're in private practice, they expect people are expected to bill $2,000 billable hours a year, which is theoretically 50, 40-hour weeks. Problem there is, there's no way you get 40 billable hours out of 40 hours. 40 billable hours is more like 60 hours. So if you do it, it's a lot of work. But if you're successful at it, it pays pretty good. You know, not like being in finance, but you know, if you're gonna do finance, you need to know how to do math. I never did. So anyway, and I did it. I had a great time up until got enough hours in, and after a while, it starts all becoming the same. I think that's a problem with anything where you're not picking and choosing the topics that you get to think about. Studying history.
That's a good note. Thank you, Randy. This is great. And so we got Randy over here to the MA program. That's a really, I've got some notes here, Randy, to revisit, but I'm gonna pass things off to Fred and then to Tim, if that's okay with everybody.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. So I'm going to jump off where Randy left off. What I work in, first, a little bit about me first. My bachelor's degree was at Cal State Long Beach. My major was political science. And after that, applied to law school, got into Whittier College School of Law, and graduated from there. And then I started my career with the state of California, and I'm actually still with the state of California. So most of the work I've done has been with the administrative state. It has been dealing with hearings that deal with state hearings. I've worked with two agencies in my tenure with the state. The first one was the Labor Commissioner's Office, so dealing with prevailing wage, looking into those contractors who are violating prevailing wage laws. And then currently, within the last 2 years, I have now been working with high-speed rail. So I'm also looking at prevailing wage, but I'm working with contracts now. So still also labor law though. And some environmental services, to clear out a lot of right of way. How do I know Dr. Murray? Well, I was in the inaugural 2020 class. I graduated on a master's 2022. Jumping off of what Randy said, sometimes after a while, it does seem to be repetitive. You tend to see the same things over again. So after over a decade of working in the law, I kind of wanted to go back to history. That was an interest of mine. Poli-sci is very related to that. So I applied for the master's program and got in. And of course, had Dr. Murray as one of the professors. It was great. So that's how I know Dr. Murray. And Dr. Murray also mentioned his brother, Tim. So that's also great to see him because he's mentioned him several times while I was in his classes. But yeah, most of the work I've done is public works contracts, prevailing wage, all of it has been with labor laws. So my emphasis has been, as opposed to Randy's in the court system, the administrative state, which continues to grow. And many attorneys are hired there. So that's something else that many of you, if you're looking into, you could work for the state of California or the federal government, or even local governments have a lot of attorneys. That's it.
Thanks, Fred. That's great. And then I'm going to ask Tim to jump in, who happens to be my brother. He's out in Atlanta, and I thought if we're going to bring in some lawyers, I better bring in my brother. Tim, do you want to do a quick self-introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Professor Murray. I was a history major undergrad at SUNY Albany, and definitely from there a non-traditional student. Finished a non-traditional student as a law student. So I finished the history degree in Albany and moved to New York City to be a successful writer, which meant I was a waiter and a bartender for a long time, and did a lot of that, which was amazing work. And I really got into it and kind of lost sight of the writing and missed it a lot. And just as a change of pace, ended up moving to Atlanta, and from here, I mean, I think things are a little bit easier in Atlanta when it comes to, finding the educational opportunities and just the foot in the door anyway. And so I took the LSAT, just because I had a mutual friend of Jeremy and mine was taking the LSAT and he was getting ready to go to law school. And I thought, oh, let me just see, I did really well in the SATs. My undergrad grades weren't that great, but I loved studying. And so did well in the LSAT, but very poorly undergrad as far as my grades went, but was able to get into an evening program. I was having to work full time. I had a baby in the house and was just looking for a change of pace and found an evening program at John Marshall Law School, which is interesting and something to watch, where they were provisionally accredited at the time, which is an interesting thing. But they promised me, yes, if you get in and start the program here, you can take the bar and practice law. And we don't know that that's true next year and all that. And it's, definitely Atlanta John Marshall Law School, not to be confused with the John Marshall Law School in Chicago. And I don't want to be disparaging of the school or anything. The education is always going to be what you make it, but there were certainly some challenges there, especially with it being a for-profit law school. They cut a lot of corners, but I was able to take the bar, did well on it. I started law school when I was 30, and when I finished, it was very much a vocational law school, I should say that, which was nice. So you learned a lot of specific things. I think, Jennifer, you're talking about ADR programs and certifications that you can get. That was something that John Marshall offered. So I was able to get a mediation certification at the same time. And right out of school, I was able to do a little bit of landlord-tenant mediation and some other private mediations while I looked around for what I wanted to do. So with a history major, it was conducive to doing well in law school and writing well in the bar exam. And from there, I've been practicing real estate law in Atlanta for the last 12 years. So, and I really enjoy it. It's always a puzzle. It's working. Randy, it's not those awful billables that you're talking about. That's one nice thing about real estate law. I mean, people are looking for the finished product a lot of the time. I mean, there are some instances where you are dealing with billables, but that's one subfield of law where you can avoid some of that stuff. So I've really enjoyed it, and I find that a history degree was really conducive to the actual law school education itself. I mean, it's fact finding, it's analysis, it's application, and it's writing. I mean, those are the main things that you have to do, and it's a ton of reading. So just be ready for that. It's a ton of reading, and it's not fun reading, but it's very satisfying reading. You really feel you're learning things, and you're not memorizing code. You're not memorizing code sections. You're learning to apply the law and learn how to find it and write about it. So I don't know, just a few high points that I can think about right now, but certainly happy to answer questions about real estate law and just non-traditional student approach and going to kind of a quirky law school, if that's something where you could end up. I mean, sometimes that's the opportunity that's there, and you certainly want to be careful, make sure that, and obviously not Jennifer or Karman's schools that they're representing here, but there are some law schools out there that are for profit, and that you do want to be mindful about accreditation, things like that. I know, I think Jeremy and Fred had chatted about that, and I was just thinking about the school that I went to and how that was relevant. The one I went to, they were actually wide open about the fact that they were provisionally accredited. So that's something to think about, what exactly that meant. I mean, if you went the next year, it didn't necessarily mean you could take the bar, but if you start then, you could. So sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. I'll let it go from there.
No, I think that's a really good point. And I'm gonna, of course, the check's in the mail in terms of plugging a history degree for Tim. Thanks for plugging the history. It's kind of funny. I just as I was thinking about this, you're a history undergrad, and Tim and I were going to school at the same time at the same school.
Yeah, we're a year apart.
I was not a history major, which is really funny. And I find myself now in a history department. I was an East Asian Studies major, and some of my students have taken the reverse, where they did the history undergrad, and now they've gone on to interdisciplinary doctoral programs. But this is really cool. I love that we have a lot on the table right now, a lot of really different experiences from 3 different practicing lawyers. And I want to thank Jennifer and Karman for joining us and for sticking around, because I'd like to return a little bit to that, if we can do it sort of cyclically, and talk a little bit about reverse engineering, your sort of Frankenstein's monster of a perfect law school applicant. And I know there's no perfect law school applicant, but a really strong elements of an applicant. And Karman mentioned this word fit, which is so important. I think in terms of any law, any work or any school, the importance of that personal statement. But Jennifer or Karman, do you want to jump in with a little bit more about a really strong law school application?
Sure, I can start. I agree with what Karman said earlier. It's really about finding, like looking at the whole application to determine whether somebody can succeed academically in the environment at the law school. And so I thank you too for that caveat that you said that there's no perfect candidate, because there are none. We have to look at the candidate with what they provide in the application. And so when we look at to first, see if they can succeed, we look at, it's not just looking at the numbers on their face, is really taking deep dives into the transcript, looking at at each semester or term, the types of courses you've taken, were they intellectually rigorous and allowed you to exercise those research and writing skills, analysis skills, communication skills, all of those things that are important to the practice of law and to succeed in law school. Also looking at course load, how many courses were you taking? What were your grade trends, right? So it's not just about the end GPA, but looking at each term, like I said. But we also know that things don't happen in a vacuum. You are living life, you are impacted by your extracurriculars. Maybe you're supporting yourself through college. Maybe you have to help your family. So we take that also into consideration to provide context for your academic performance. So if you have an explanation for why you don't feel that your grades accurately reflect that potential in law school, then definitely submit that, because that will be taken into consideration. But going back to the resume, all those concurrent activities that you're doing, we look at that and the fact that you're able to succeed academically, that tells us a lot about your potential to succeed in law school. But as for fit, that's where that personal statement really comes in key. We want to know what really drives you to pursue law. We want to find students who are passionate, who have clearly articulated reasons for wanting to go to law school. Now, you don't have to know what you want to practice or even what type of area of law that you want to go into, but you have to know why you want to pursue this vocation, because that is going to be your motivating factor as you're going through your 1L exams and studying for the bar. You want to have that passion that you can draw upon. And so I think to, answer your question about what makes a strong candidate, we're looking for people who can succeed, who are passionate, who are able to articulate that passion and have the abilities to do that. So that's what we're looking for.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Karman, did you want to jump in with a little more about this?
Jennifer was very comprehensive in her explanation of what we're looking for in general. As we've all indicated, there is no ideal candidate because, we will receive over 6,000 applicants. There will be 6,000 stories, and all of them can be extremely compelling. We're really trying to find out who you are under all of what Jennifer has already mentioned and the why of why we are looking for who you are. My advice would be to be as comprehensive as possible on the application, to share with us all of who you are and and to piece it together for us, right? Don't leave gaps for us to guess. And as Jennifer mentioned, run that clear string through your application so it is clear as to why you are now at the place of applying to law school. And don't make us guess. It doesn't have to be overt in that I am applying to law school because the storyline needs to be there. Share with us all of who you are, why you worked full-time, what circumstances required you to work full-time, because working full-time isn't just the hours. It is sharing with us the fact that you're responsible, mature, you can multitask, you are incredibly responsible and can work under stressful conditions and still succeed. So success isn't defined just by numbers, and quite frankly, at times isn't defined by numbers at all. It is defined by the story that you are telling us as to who you are and what makes you who you are and what is your passion, as Jennifer mentioned. Everyone's passion will be different, and people will ask, should I have interned at a law firm? Should I have hours working in a law firm? Should I, have spoken to attorneys or what have you? People, the law touches every corner of society and every industry across the world, quite frankly. So you can all come from different places, different walks of life, and that is the beauty of law school. Those of us who went to law school know that there is a spectrum of personalities, a spectrum of people from one end to the other. That is the beauty of the law school experience as a student, the enjoyable nature, and quite frankly, the vibrancy of a community as I work in a law firm, at a law school. So bring to us who you are, all of who you are, make the story make sense to us, and allow us to enjoy the story of who you are and why you have come to now apply to law school.
Thanks, Karman, and thanks, Jennifer. And I that idea of a story, of a narrative, presenting a clear idea to the people reading the applications of who you are. I think that's a really good bit of advice to people who are putting together an application, and to think about what you're putting forward and what somebody reading that application can take away with clarity. That's great, and some really, I think, applicable advice. Okay, I want to open the floor now to our guests. I also want to open the floor to anybody who's joining us on Zoom to please feel free to type a question in the chat, or to raise your virtual hand, or of course to our students here. Christina, we got a question. Please jump in.
Do they give funding if you get into law school?
Funding. Law school is famously expensive, right? So what funding options and opportunities for law school? Anybody want to jump in on that?
I mean, I would just say it, especially the law school I went to, it was very expensive, and it was, part-time at night. And it often means a lot of student loans. It also means, a significantly different salary for the most part. I mean, often, and that's a part of it. If you go into public interest law, there are forgiveness programs, of course, too. So I think that's something to think about. I mean, if you're going for a really expensive law degree, if you have a plan for it, you do income-based repayment and public interest law, there are forgiveness programs. But also, if you go into the private sector, the difference in the salary that you're making is significant, and it can still be income-based in paying it back. It's something to think about, but it is wicked expensive, and just something to consider while considering whether to go to law school. I don't regret it, and I don't regret it at all. I think it was something well worth it, and it was a lot of student loan debt to take on to do it. So just from one person's personal experience, I don't know what everyone else feels.
Just from an admissions standpoint, I guess this lends itself to the advice of just make sure when you go to law school, you're sure you want to go to law school, right? It's not just a financial investment. It is obviously a time commitment and emotional investment as well. But yes, law school is incredibly expensive. Just speaking from, again, from the admissions standpoint, many law schools will have scholarship opportunities, need-based grant opportunities, a loan repayment assistance program post-law school if you pursue public interest. So I'll just encourage you, no matter what law school you are applying to and later admitted to look into scholarship opportunities, financial assistance as it relates to funds you don't need to pay back, gift aid, like need-based grants as well. Just in the interest of time, I will direct you to the UCLA Law Scholarship page on the website, just for information about scholarships and need-based grants that we offer here at UCLA Law.
And to add on to that, applying, I think Tim mentioned this too, applying to law school itself is expensive. So you have to also, make sure that you have the funds for that and, factor that into your costs, studying for the LSAT or GRE. Paying for the report fees, paying for the application fees, all of that, maybe tutoring or, study guides, that all adds up. And, and then you also have to count on, how many law schools are you applying to? So it really can get expensive just from the outset as you prepare for law school. So also keep that in mind. Look into what resources. LSAC has a fee waiver program that you can apply to. It's needs-based. Contact the schools that you're interested in, seeing if they waive their fees. So it doesn't hurt to ask, right? And do your research. So definitely do that before you even, plan out your law school application process. Another thing to also, scholarships, ask when you are in that position and you are evaluating your offers, see, are the offices open to, reconsideration for awards? So some, might welcome that. And so keep that in mind as well, too, when you're thinking about, which offers are you going to consider, and, make sure upfront, what your cost will be going in and then out. And there's another resource too. Access Flex is really great. They're a nonprofit that offers financial aid counseling. So definitely look into that too. But look into all the different scholarship opportunities that might be out there. Not just at the law school, but there are tons out there that are offered through local bar associations, maybe through the Cal States. So definitely look into that. And every little bit helps.
Thanks, Carmen and Jennifer.
Yeah, I might add, Jeremy, sorry, real quick to that too. Like I know in the Jennifer, you were talking about the prep for going to going to law school is pricey. Also, something to think about is like the bar prep period when you're done with law school. There is another period there where you're prepping for the bar and fitness with the, if you're trying to get licensed with the state bar. Those are very expensive applications as well. So like a bar prep course, a fitness course, things like that, just being able to take the bar, those are pretty pricey too, and things to think about as you're ramping up towards it. But I think it's not just something good to plan for. Like once you're really sure, yeah, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to law school, you want to think about, you're not just planning for a 3-year period, or if you're doing part-time, a 4-year period. It's also a little stretch afterwards where you really need to make sure that there are added expenses, and I mean, it takes a lot of time to study for the bar too. So you need to think about that. You can't really, you can work and study for the bar at the same time, but it's not easy. So.
Thanks, Tim. And you mentioned the difference, I think, between different areas of law also, and the way you're going to make a lot more money in different areas of law, but also that public service loan forgiveness option is, or and I think Carmen and Jennifer might have mentioned this, payment plans and ways of paying off if you're excited to go into an area of law that is not going to be as lucrative. There are, those opportunities. Right?
Of course, if you get hired by a big firm that pays you good money, then you're paying off the loan. It's really simple because they pay you enough to do it. So, of course, I only knew a couple of people that got those kind of jobs, and they mostly didn't like them. And a lot of them quit and went to work in smaller firms for less money.
Is it the financial sector or the particular sectors you have in mind?
Well, big firms,
Big
big
law
firms that work for big companies. That what at the time was like Pillsbury, Madison and Sutro was, at the time, I think it was the biggest law firm in the country. They represented Standard Oil and, and they paid a lot of money to first year associates, but then they locked them in small rooms and made them work their asses off.
It's a trade-off, I guess.
Yeah.
There's a lot of trade-offs. That's great. Thank you, Randy. Again, I want to invite our Zoom attendees to post. I shared a couple things as Jennifer and Karman were talking there. I searched for an Access Lex, and I think I found what Jennifer, you're talking about. Also USC and UCLA of financial assistance and scholarship programs there shared in the chat. Hayden, you should be able to unmute if you'd like. Please go ahead.
Hi there. Hi, I'm Hayden. So the question I wanted to ask was, and sorry, as far as specializing in a type of law, like after law school, like pursuing further education, I've seen that like at UCLA, there's a JD and MA program, but then I've also seen that there are Masters of Legal Studies degrees, and so I was curious as to like the like real difference in those, or if there's like in the long term, really any effect or like difference.
Yeah, so at UCLA Law School, we have some other programs aside from the JD program as well. We have our LLM program, our Master's in Legal Studies program, and our SJD program as well. They are separate degrees, like the JD degree. The JD MAs that we have, JD MBA, JD MA in public policy, public health, and other ones as well, are joint degree programs where you earn a master's degree in addition to the JD concurrently. So instead of spending what would be 5 years to earn a JD MBA, for example, you would actually earn it in 4 years. So it's like a master's degree in public policy, public health, as I mentioned. The MLS program, the LLM program, or SJD program are under the umbrella of the law school. So they are legal law-related degrees. They're just different degrees in the JD. Now, what you want to pursue, for example, the JD MA, that really depends at the end of the day what career path you want to take. So obviously, if you pursue a master's in public policy, for example, and a JD, what is it that you want to do at the end of the day, right? So I always advise people, I actually did pursue a joint degree as well while I was in law school. I actually would advise you, if you were here at UCLA, to speak to a career counselor, because it depends. It's from the perspective of the employer, right? If you're going to work at a big law firm, typically, you don't really need the MA, you just need the JD. It just depends. If you don't want to practice law and you want to sort of have an option outside of practicing law, you want to pursue more research-based and policy-based career path, maybe the public health degree would help you. It's difficult really to discern how helpful it is at the end of the day. It's more of what your goals are career-wise.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Karman. And I shared in the chat there the joint degree programs there. Karman mentioned something that is a recurring theme in this, now the 11th in this series, and that is seek guidance and make your needs known. Because when you meet terrific people like Karman and Jennifer and Tim and Randy and Fred, you find people who are eager to answer your questions and to give you guidance and are in a position to give you guidance. So you really, this is something that it's a sort of mantra of mine, and you all have heard this many times, and that is to make your needs known, whether it's here in the MA or the BA program or in preparation for applying to law school, because you're going to find there are many wonderful people who want to hear your questions and want to give you good answers and realistic answers and supportive answers and constructive answers. So I just want to amplify that. A note that Karman quickly said there in terms of getting counseling advice, whether it's when you're already at law school or when you're applying to law school. So if you're the one who's asking those questions, it's a pretty good chance you're gonna get some terrific answers. So definitely make your needs known out there. Great. All right, that was nothing in the chat, but Fred shared the calbar.ca.gov website, and so I went ahead and I just pasted your note there. And Fred, thank you. Okay, kind of a free for all. If anybody else would like to jump in here, Randy, did you want to jump back?
Yeah, I just have a couple points that one, if you're gonna go to law school, start your application process early. I didn't. And because of that, I missed out on an opportunity to apply to Berkeley's law school. They have a cutoff separate from all the other UC law schools. And my LSAT score was high enough, I probably could have gotten in there. And because I couldn't apply, I didn't get in there. Take an LSAT course. That's probably why my LSAT score was high enough that I could have gotten into Berkeley. I didn't take the SAT or any of those things. The only placement test I've ever taken was the LSAT, and I took a course for it, and it really helped. When you're in law school is very stressful. When I was a third year, I was working with people with disabilities, and there was one student who had a disability, and she was falling behind, and was getting angry rather than getting help, and she wound up killing herself. Very sad moment. And my understanding is in law schools, about every 3 years, and the top level law schools, somebody kills themselves at the school. So don't let that happen to you if you're gonna go to law school. Reach out, get the help. Don't take it so seriously. It's not the end of the world if you fall out of law school. You know, a lot of people drop out and have very good careers and good, happy lives. It's not for everybody.
Thanks, Randy. Thanks for that. Sharing. Yeah, the stress of and the intense competition, I assume, on everything.
The competition was fun.
Thanks for sharing that.
Dr. Murray, actually, I want to jump up a little bit what he said.
Yeah, Fred,
I
go ahead.
think that is something else to look at is when applying to law school, see what the retention rate is. They do have retention rates, and that information sometimes is public to see how many first years make it to graduation. I personally would think that's a very important piece of data when you're applying, because it shows whether or not the school is actually putting resources in there to get those first years to be actual graduates.
And they show bar passage rate too. I think that's it. Yeah, retention rate to get over the line, and then also the bar passage rate, because that's a critical piece towards the end. You want to make sure that the law school is, yes, you're getting a well-rounded education, but also teaching to the test, right? I mean, to some degree, you got to pass that thing. So, but I totally agree with that retention rate.
That's really helpful. I like, and along with Randy's point about preparing, some students in our program get ready to apply to grad school, MA and PhD programs, but also I think the same would apply for JD. When you're doing this, get your ducks in a row and do it early and have a kind of organized approach to it. I think that's really important. And again, making your needs known, but having a sort of a dossier on these different programs listed by doing this. This is what I suggest in terms of applying to PhD programs, which is having a list with the earliest due date first and sort of checking them off the list, but being really well prepared. And these kind of things that Fred and Tim talked about in terms of doing your homework in advance so that you know some of these things about the program. I assume that would also work into what Carmen and Jennifer talked about as fit, and your knowledge of the competitiveness or the campus culture or the way that law school fits for you is a great thing to put into your application as well. So it pays dividends in many ways to do that kind of homework. Thanks. Oh, and Jennifer put another note in about USC Gold there. So please, Gould, sorry, USC Gould School of Law, please jump into the chat there and click through there as well. We are moving toward the bottom of the hour, and I don't want to keep our guests past 6:30, but we do 6:30 local time. Actually, it's 9:30 for my brother over in Atlanta there. So if anybody has any parting thoughts or things that they'd like to wrap up with, please, Celeste, jump in.
So I do have two questions. So I've been considering law school for about, I want to say the past 2 months. I've talked to law school ambassadors from USC, Irvine. I've looked at different programs. I guess one of my biggest things, and it's completely different than applying to a master's level or a PhD level, is the rolling admissions process and how that really works. As well as, I know we talked about the concentrations varying between different colleges, but trying to choose a school that fits that as opposed to like a PhD or master's program where you're looking for those mentors specifically to match your interests and how you would go about that with law school.
Rolling admissions process. And then also, yeah, when we're applying for PhD programs, we look for almost like a master apprentice relationship, right? A very, very close working relationship, sort of like an aunt or uncle for the next 7 or 8 years, right? 6 years. And I assume that's different from a JD application. But would you be looking at faculty roles and what faculty do at programs? I think Tim mentioned working closely with faculty members who are really strong and aligning yourself with their work, sometimes seeking out their classes. But in the application process, Jennifer and Carmen, in terms of that sort of preliminary research that Celeste was mentioning, do you have any other recommendations about getting to know the program and the faculty and that kind of thing? And then also about the rolling applications. Is there rolling applications or does that exist at USC and UCLA?
Yes, we do have rolling admissions, so definitely apply earlier in the cycle, as early in the cycle as you can with your strongest application, because we admit, and as we admit more people, then there are fewer and fewer spots available. So definitely you want to make sure you apply at least by the priority deadline. For us, that's February 1st. But do look at, each school. As for fit, Celeste, you had mentioned, talking to our ambassadors. I think that's great. You should do that for every school, and talk to the students that are there, because they can, I think, give you an idea of what the environment is like and what their student experiences have been like. Tour, if that option is available. Also sit in on a class if that's available. But the more that you can experience the school and talk to people, I think that is really helpful for you to figure out if that's the right fit for you. And as for like finding maybe the program that's right for you, curriculum wise, I think that starting off with maybe looking at those concentrations and certificates is a good way to figure that out. Talking to the students, it's very, I think, beyond that first year, which is going to be pretty much the same across the board at every law school, right? The foundational law school courses, you really have the opportunity to explore your interests, take bar courses too, so you can prepare for the bar exam and pass. But I think that starting off with maybe the looking at their certificates or concentrations, as well as looking at maybe joining the student organizations. I think that student orgs can be really great at help you to network, and a lot of them will host lunches, lunchtime talks where they'll invite speakers to talk about their day in the life or how they got into a particular field. So I think that that is also a great way to maybe find whether this law school offers the right, the courses that you are interested in doing. Also, see if there are course descriptions on websites. You can see some of the representative courses that are offered. And then later on, and I think too, right, looking at the faculty bios, I think that's really helpful as well to see what types of, topics that they teach on.
UCLA law also is on a rolling admissions process. It's not an exact science, because I think sometimes applicants think we're on, applications are on a conveyor belt and we read, make a decision, read, make a decision. It's not an exact science. So don't be surprised if you're talking to a friend who applied after you and heard before you. In general, yes, it is rolling, but it's not an exact science. So just putting that out there. Everything Jennifer mentioned, I agree with, and trying to figure out, if you already know what area of law you wish to practice, tapping into the resources different law schools might have, but also know that again, the law, even within specific areas of focus, span, in great variety. So you may come in thinking you want to practice in a particular area, a niche within a particular area, and you end up being interested in something far different. So nothing wrong with being open-minded when you're going to law school either in that regard.
Thanks, Karman and Jennifer. Tim or Fred, do you want to hop in with any closing thoughts?
Okay, I was gonna let Tim go first, but I would say, jumping off on what everyone here has said is, especially the first year is definitely different from what I experienced, let's say right now in the master's program in history for at Cal State San Bernardino. You don't have that mentorship program, that one-on-one, it really is a foundational classes, and it's a lot. And so I would say it's not just a lot of reading, it's a particular type of reading. I would suggest anyone who really is considering law school to go out there, and if you can find these textbooks which are out there for tours or contracts, just go into it and see how you feel looking at this. I did not do that, and I wish I had, just so that I had some feeling of what I was getting into, especially that first year, because it kind of gives you an idea that you're not just, the reading is very different from like what I did in a master's program in history. It's very different. You're not reading history, and the writing is just very different. The legal writing is just done differently. So something else I would recommend, if you can go to the Supreme Court website, whether it's the California Supreme Court or SCOTUS, they publish their decisions online. Jump on and see and read them. See if you actually enjoy reading that. All of that is just something I wish I had done. I'm speaking for myself before actually going. I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it, but this is something that I wish I had done, so you have an idea, mental preparation, that what you're doing is very different from your bachelor's degree or even, like I said, a master's.
I like reading amicus briefs.
You like reading amicus briefs?
Yeah, I like.
For a little nighttime reading, just to.
I know they're like really nice to browse through. Like I just enjoy reading them. Like
It's really cool.
Like every cycle of the court, I read like one or two. Yes, I enjoy.
That's good advice. Thanks, Bashar. That's good advice, Fred. I'm gonna put this in chat, just the opinions. Tim, you're gonna jump in.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, totally agree with Fred as to the reading. It's something completely different, but if you stick with it, it's super interesting and just something completely different from reading for pleasure. And I think it took a year after law school before I picked up a book, which was sad and hate to admit that. But I mean, it before I started remembering that you can read for pleasure afterwards, because there's so much to catch up with. But Yeah, I would say just think really hard about it, make sure it's what you want to do, and if it is, you'll love it. I mean, it is hard work and it's competitive, but it's so satisfying. And if it's what you want to do, I highly recommend it. But just make sure that it is. One thing that was very helpful for me is I got a job pretty early on as a research assistant for a law professor who taught a legal writing course. And so, learned a lot about arbitration and pre-dispute arbitration clauses for one thing, and thought that that was the law I was going to go into, but because that's what she was writing about. So I was researching it all the time. But it was so helpful because she was a legal writing professor that, I had a resource because Fred, absolutely, there's that mentorship is not there in law school for the most part. Like, at least it's not built into the structure. I mean, I think it's what you make it in a lot of ways, but agreed. My experience was that it wasn't built into the structure, especially going to the kind of law school I went to. And I think there's probably better support in a lot of other law schools, but even still, I don't think it's designed the same way, no matter where you go. So, if you can find that kind of work as a research assistant, you're also developing that relationship and working with someone who's had success already. So just something to think about. But if it's something you want to do, I think it's really worth it. And it's something about being in school that's very, very satisfying in general, especially when you've been out. I liked having the break also, a couple of years or a few years in between undergrad and going to law school and making sure that I really wanted to go. I mean, I don't know if Carmen and Jennifer would agree with that, because that could probably affect your application in a lot of different ways. But just something to think about in terms of actually just going to law school. And I don't know what you compromised in doing that, but I think I'm glad I did that.
Taking a year or two out, or some longer out after undergrad and then before applying to law school.
Yeah, or just thinking about it as something that's still on the table. If you don't want to go to law school, you can go do whatever it is you're going to do and realize that, you know what, I can still, if this isn't what I want to do in the end, I can still always go to law school. You can always go back and do it. So if you take the LSAT, it's good for like 3 years, I think. I think your score is good for a little while. So if you get a nice LSAT score, it doesn't mean you have to go right away necessarily. But again, that may not be consistent with having the best law school application. So I don't know that that's good advice.
That's interesting. Can we put that actually to Carmen and Jennifer for maybe one final round from you both in terms of applicants taking a year or two or longer out and then coming back in terms of having that certainty that this is what you want to do? Is that in your experience, is that clarifying for an applicant to sort of know, this is what I want?
Yeah, I can go first, Carmen, but I think you two mentioned it earlier, Tim, about, Cameron, you mentioned about having legal experience. It's not necessary for admissions, but I think it's good for you as the applicant to see if, this is what something you can see yourself doing, right? You are observing what the attorneys are doing. You're helping them with these, research or filing pleadings or, responding to clients, doing intake, and that I think is good to just see if that is a good fit for you. But as for taking gap years, that's totally fine. I think that, you do get, especially if you didn't have any work experience during college, getting those skills, maybe developing some maturity and learning responsibility. I think that helps as well. And then, yes, it's just a good way to, if you have that kernel of an idea to go to law school, but then you've been in the workforce and you have seen, maybe you enjoy what you do now, you can determine, is this something that I really want to do? And I think that maturity also, you can look at, the financing and the application process and everything and determine for yourself, is this something that I want to really do and take on?
Yeah, and just briefly, we are not, sorry, Jennifer.
Oh, no, sorry. I meant, I don't mean to interrupt you, Carmen. I just wanted to say, so short, bottom line, it doesn't affect your application or admission chances. Sorry, Carmen.
Yes, no, agreed. Jennifer encapsulated exactly what I was going to say. We are not one to tell you when is the right time to go to law school. Only you know that from your personal standpoint. So I agree with everything Jennifer just said.
And we are past the bottom of the hour. I'm so grateful to our guests, to Randy here, to Tim and to Fred, to Carmen and to Jennifer for taking time out of your evening. I know this is an awkward time of day to have an information session like this, whether you had to all stay in the office or you're at home. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it on behalf of my students, on behalf of myself, so that I can maybe have a little bit better information when I talk to students about career counseling and that kind of thing. I feel like I learned a lot. So thank you so much for joining us. A round of applause here. I realize that the very high-tech speaker cancels out applause as what was it called again? Noise suppression.
Yes.
So we had a nice round of applause here and our noise cancellation canceled it out. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining us.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.